Everyone on the internet seems to be fine, which is a strange because the economy is not fine. People are worried about their jobs, about their rent, about what things cost now versus what they cost 2 years ago. And yet, open any social media app. And what do you see? Perfect morning routines. Matcha in a ceramic cup. A flat that looks like nobody actually lives in it. Someone who has somehow found the time, the money, and the lighting to look completely unbothered. Today, we are going to talk about why that image exists, what it does to you when you see it, and who benefits when it makes you feel like you are falling behind. In 1954, a psychologist named Leon Festinger wrote something that has aged badly for all of us. He said that human beings have a drive, almost biological, to evaluate themselves by comparing themselves to others. Not because we are shallow, because we are social. We don't have an internal measuring stick for how we are doing, so we look outward. Festinger called it social comparison theory. And at the time, it was actually a fairly neutral idea. Sometimes you compare down and feel better, sometimes you compare up and feel motivated. The key thing Festinger assumed was that you chose who you compared yourself to. That assumption is now dead. Here is what changed. Social media didn't just give us more people to compare ourselves to. It removed our ability to choose which people those were. The algorithm chooses for you. And the algorithm is not optimizing for your psychological well being. It is optimizing for engagement, for time on screen, for the feeling that keeps you scrolling. Recent research has confirmed what most of us already suspect. Passive scrolling, just watching, not posting, increases what researchers call upward social comparison. And crucially, these comparisons are involuntary. You didn't go looking for them, the feed placed them in front of you. So you're not comparing yourself to your actual peers. You're comparing yourself to the most photogenic, most composed, most aesthetically successful version of someone in a similar situation to you, who also had the time and resources to document it beautifully. That is a structurally unfair comparison, and it is designed to feel like a fair one. Let's be specific about what curated stability actually looks like. It looks like the 5 a.m. wake up, the Pilates class, the skincare routine with 12 steps that somehow takes 4 minutes, the apartment with the linen curtains, and the one well placed plant. The person who, despite everything happening in the world, appears to have their life sorted. This is not wellness content. This is a class signal with a filter on it. What the clean lifestyle aesthetic is actually communicating underneath all the ceramics and the muted palette is, I am not anxious. I am not worried. I have made the right choices. And when you are anxious and worried and not sure you have made the right choices, seeing that image does something specific to you. It makes your instability feel like a personal failure, not a structural one, not an economic one. Yours. Here is the thing that most commentary on this gets completely wrong. People assume that the person creating the perfect morning routine video is calm. They are not. The person filming their perfectly arranged skincare shelf at 6 a.m. is managing the same anxiety you feel watching it. They are performing composure. And performance, by definition, is not the same as the real thing. The content that makes you feel inadequate was produced by someone feeling inadequate. The feed is anxiety performing as calm, all the way down. And here's the commercial layer. Both of you, the creator and the viewer, are being sold the same thing. The aesthetic of a life that isn't being disrupted, a routine, a product, a version of yourself that has it together. The gap between how your life feels and how life is being presented online. That gap is not a problem the system is trying to solve. That gap is the product. Let me give you some examples because this is where it gets interesting. There is a skincare brand called Aesop, brown glass bottles, minimal labels, apothecary aesthetics, literary reference in the store. You walk in and it feels like a library that also sells hand wash. It made an estimated 700 million last year. What is it selling? Not ingredients, not a formula. It is selling what it feels like to be the kind of person who doesn't need to be sold to. It is selling composure, restraint, the aesthetic of someone who is above the anxiety of the ordinary market. The irony, and this is worth sitting with, is that you buy Aesop in a state of anxious desire about the person you want to be. And the product is designed to look like something purchased by someone without that desire. Then there is Muji, the Japanese brand that sells you the aesthetic of having less, plain packaging, no logos, functional objects. The brand communicates, I have edited my life. I'm not cluttered. I'm calm. Muji does not sell anti consumerism. It sells the aesthetic of anti consumerism. You buy more Muji to feel like you have less. It's a brilliant inversion. And then there is perhaps the most honest example, the Calm app, a technology product sitting inside your phone next to Instagram, charging you a subscription for the experience of not feeling how Instagram makes you feel. Let me name what's actually happening here because I don't think it gets said clearly enough. When structural economic instability is presented online as a personal aesthetic failure, when everyone who is struggling is surrounded by images of people who appear not to be, something very specific happens. You don't think this is a system that has created difficult conditions for a lot of people. You think, what is wrong with me? And then the system answers, here is something you can buy. That spending is not irrational. The spending is a completely rational response to an irrational situation. You're trying to close the gap between how life feels and how life is being presented, between where you are and where the feed suggests you should be. Researchers have a word for this: relative deprivation. The feeling that your rewards are less than those of people in comparable situations. The sense, not necessarily accurate, that you have not received what you deserve. Social media doesn't just trigger relative deprivation, it industrializes it at scale. Every hour of every day. Now, here's the part that I find genuinely fascinating in a bleak way. People eventually notice this. There was a backlash. De influencing became a trend. Underconsumption became a hashtag. Creators started posting their unwashed hair and their cluttered kitchens and their real or unoptimized lives. And within a single trend cycle, the backlash became a content category, which became a brand strategy, which became something you could buy into. The authentic mess aesthetic was adopted by brands within months. Real became a marketing tone. Imperfection became the new curation. The system absorbed the critique of the system and turned it into another product. There is no outside of the economy. The anxiety economy has no exit door, only a revolving one. So, why does everyone online look financially calm? Because calm is what the system rewards. Because composure performs well. Because the algorithm surfaces aspiration, not reality. Because there is a multi billion pound market sitting in the gap between how things feel and how things look. And because the people performing calm are managing the same anxiety you feel watching them. Which means if you have ever scrolled through a feed of perfect lives during a difficult week and felt like the problem was you, it wasn't. You were just in the market. Next week, we look at the historical pattern. What always sells during a downturn? And what that data tells us about the economy we are actually living in, not the one we are performing. Hi, I'm Akanksha, and this was The Storyteller's Lens. Please subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much.